unethical dimension to it until it's run, and someone informs you, there's a background to this. What do? Do you go and assign a new review, or what's sort of the damage control?
Let me speak to this from scars that glow in the dark after many years. I'm not talking about the one that before you published. I'm talking about the ones that you do publish. That it turns out that you should have known better. You have no choice but to fess up and in public and as quickly and as prominently as possible, because you've done real damage to your credibility. In a particularly grievous instance in my tenure at the Times Book Review in the early 70s, I got a telephone call from the lawyer, the hotshot lawyer many of you may remember if you're as old as I am, Melvin Belli. And Melvin Belli wanted to review a book that somebody, I can't remember the name of the author now, Charles something, had written on judges in America. And had written, it was an attack on judges. And Melvin Belli suggested plausibly to me that he had a lot of opinions on judges and that this book was a wonderful jumping off point for telling stories about judges, et cetera, et cetera. So I commissioned that, and in came a review, which was quite entertaining and favorable to the book under review, and I published it. And I then got a call from a reporter, I believe at the Philadelphia Inquirer, saying that he had heard that that all of this was a joke, that Belli was a friend of the author of this book, and that the author of the book had posed as Belli with Belli's permission and had conned me into getting his own book assigned to him, and he'd written the review himself, and I had published it. And I said, "Good God!" There's no. I'm good at talking my way out of lots of things, but there was no way to talk my way out of that. And I made a few inquiries, and everybody thought it was very humorous, but me, I didn't think it was humorous. So I devoted the back page of the Times Book Review, the following issue, to a column titled "Suckered," and described the whole thing, and said that that none of this is funny. None of it is funny. A whole bunch of people have been cheated, so you could have your clubby yucks. And as a result, everybody that seems to have been associated with this, all I can do is say I'll never have anything to do with them again. But that's insufficient because everybody's been cheated. When you find out, if you find out in time, obviously you don't run it. But again, your recourse. This is. I repeat again what I said at the very beginning. This is not life and death. It's not. It's. You don't cut off people's hands because they behave badly in this. You just say, "I'll never use that person as a reviewer again. I'll never trust that person." In my tenure at the Times Book Review, you could never trust a poet.
Now it's coming out.
All poets had ulterior agendas. All poets had mixed motives. Poets would wait for decades to get somebody who'd stolen their girlfriend. Poets, the person who was the chairman of the department at the university was going to get it. Christopher holding a grudge. All poets behaved badly. And I had to get out of town. I had to hire Helen Bendler up in Boston to basically vet every single book of poetry that came in, because I would trust her and I wouldn't trust anybody else to at least tell me where the bodies were buried. You never know where all the bodies are buried, but when you find out one is buried, you've got to make it clear. You've got to fess up. You've got to apologize to everybody as quickly as possible.
See, John, now you're getting into the spirit of the survey. It's like I tell a quick case of mine a long time ago where I assigned a review of a biography of Michener to somebody who had worked for him on one of his teams of researchers, and I thought I had vetted the guy and, that the relationship was fine and he knew about Michener and all that. And then it was a Friday and our book section was ready to run, and I learned that he had sued Michener. and actually, won money from Michener, and he hadn't told me this and all of that. So luckily, in those days, we didn't have much advance time, and I was able to put The Beans of Egypt, Maine, as I remember, by Carolyn Shute, which would not have been a cover review, on the cover. So, that was savable. But the other thing that always sticks in my mind is setting up a review with actually a poet, a leading black poet. A good guy, liked him and all of that. We set it all up, ready to go, and I said to him, well, I guess we're in great shape unless you were married to her. And he said, I thought you knew that. I said, no, how the hell am I going to know that? Am I tracking your sex life like every day? Or, but luckily we had time to back out of that. But this is why one of the best answers on this survey, which happened in our earlier survey too, was that both reviewer and editor should feel an obligation to raise a potential conflict of interest. Reviewers just shouldn't leave it to the editor, because editors are too busy often to remember to ask and so on.
Right, and I think that's the key point, is that it's a mutual obligation. Editors only know what reviewers are going to tell them. I mean, unless you know the reviewer really, really, really well, which only happens in a rare instance. So you can ask the question, but if you don't get the answer, you're at the mercy. But I agree, just with everyone, that if you get caught in that situation, you have no choice but to just come clean instantly. And I think in the case, if someone trashes a book out of nefarious purposes, probably to reassign the book.
Yeah, you've been very patient in the first row there. Sorry about that, Riff.
My name is Elise Annabelle. I'm the host, writer, and co-editor of a podcast show called Latina Source. I edit a book. I review a book twice a month, and I'm looking for more advice on how to filter out. I had a conversation with a professor about a specific author who's an amazing Latina author, but I hated her book, and she's actually here today, and I'm probably going to end up meeting her, and I'm reviewing her book on the next show. How do you filter out? How do you, filter out a lot of the voices in your head, and stay objective, and true to the book? I was having a lot of issues with the characters, but how much of that is what you're hearing from external forces and what's true to the author's words?
Anybody?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's hard to filter out. Suppose the character reminds you of somebody you know in your life and you despise. It's very hard to not. But I think finally your obligation is to try and figure out what the writer is trying to do and how well the writer has succeeded in whatever he or she is trying to do, and that has nothing to do with the characters. And also, something in general I'd like to raise, which is one of the things that bothers me most about contemporary book reviewing and contemporary reading, which is this kind of nutty idea that if you don't like the characters in a book, you don't like the book. Mm-hmm. And that's, how would you read Crime and Punishment, for example? I mean, the guy kills two old ladies for no reason. So I think that has to be filtered out, too. And just, what was she trying to do? What were her aims? Did she accomplish it? And in that sense, you can take yourself out of it.
And on a more practical level, I never read anything about a book that I'm writing about, and I expect reviewers to do that too. I never read any other reviews. I don't read profiles. I don't read the publicity materials. I don't read jacket copy. I don't read anything. I just read the book. And I try and stay away from it. And if it's a book that I'm really interested in, for instance, I recently reviewed the Michael Chabon novel, and I was curious about what other people were saying about that. So I saved those pieces, and then after my piece ran, I read them. But I think it's really difficult to keep the voices out of your head anyway, and if you actively are inviting the voices into your head, then it's impossible.
Quick piece of info to the question, should a reviewer read other reviews of a book before reviewing it? 40% said no, 17% or so said yes, it's okay. So I think a lot of us have that feeling that you don't want all of that in your head. My quick answer would be just stick to the book, review the book, because there is so much bullshit in the air. Pre-publication reviews, Kakutani killing books in their crib, and so on. And I know there are people around the country, they think that, Kakutani killed it, we don't have to worry about it. Yeah. It's dead in the country because now instead of her review running in one place, it's running in 30 places with all the demise of book reviews we'll talk about on Sunday. So, book review editors, who have the privilege of getting all of these books in their offices, you should go to the book, read the first 20 pages, get a sense of what it is, keep going, and forget about the rest. Other questions? We've got about 5 minutes. Yeah. There.
Yes, I used to review books on a very regular basis in the 80s and 90s, for example, for the daily newspaper in Louisville back when the Binghams owned it. And in those days, I was given 350 words to cover a book, and I learned pretty quickly the craft of A, telling the reader what the book was about, B, giving some idea of how it was structured, how it differed